Can you believe it? It's finally here. It's the most wonderful time of the year, unless you get stressed out about how to pay for it. SaveWithConrad.com can help you make this the best Christmas ever. You won't make a house payment for the next 2 months. That's right. Skip your next 2 house payments and use all that cash for your extra holiday expenses. And come next year, you're going to have a lower monthly payment. Don't put Christmas on a credit card. Pay your credit card debt off at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 65084, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Connie. I'm good. How are you doing, bud?
Man, better than I deserve. Excited to be with you today.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you. And hopefully we're doing a new thing, folks, as far as our technical side of this process. And this is where I am at my most vulnerable and most frustrating, because I don't know, come here from Sikkim on this damn thing. So thanks to our man, Dave Silva, you know, our buddy, he's helped us a lot. And Conrad, you've helped a lot. So I don't know. We'll make it work. I promise you. And it'll be a good show.
It will be
on a busy week, by the way, on a real busy week.
We're going to be talking today about Clash of the Champions 22. But boy, before we jump into that, it feels like we've had a ton of really, really good feedback on our most recent shows. And I know you're geared up because it's AEW pay-per-view weekend.
Yeah.
So everybody got to see Dynamite last night. They're going to get to see Rampage this Friday. And of course, what a big show you've got at the pay-per-view. MJF in a title opportunity. A lot of people are wringing their hands to see what's next for MJF and AEW. What do you think? You think that bastard gets his hand raised, or the MVP of AEW, Moxley, walks away with his title intact?
Man, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer. Unfortunately, I'm glad I don't know what's going to happen. It may be MJF's time. We'll see. The build-up's been interesting and compelling more often than not. Those two guys should have a hell of a match. The card is so stacked, man. I mean, this is one of the bigger pay-per-view cards we've ever done at AEW, and it's loaded. So a lot to enjoy this weekend. I'm flying up to Newark in a few minutes later today as we're recording this. So it'll be it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I love my work. This is good shit.
It is good shit, and I'm excited to watch that show. Of course, I can't believe this is real. Somehow Jeff Jarrett finds himself in crazy spots over and over and over. He's going to be standing across the ring from Sting. Of course, Darby Allin and Jay Lethal round out the matchup, but I don't think I had that on my bingo card this year. And we got an incredible 4-way for the Ring of Honor title. Chris Jericho, Claudio Castagnoli, Bryan Danielson. I mean, this is a doggone loaded card, and I'm looking forward to it. And from what I hear, by the time everybody's listening to this, it's sold out. I think there's just a few hundred tickets left as we're recording, and
yeah,
I know those will be going.
Yeah, it's the tickets are moving well. Thanks to everybody that's bought one, and it's going to be a hell of a show. I'm just telling you that there's something on this card for everybody. Personal issues, championships, things of that nature. So it'll be fun to watch. On the broadcast. It's going to be interesting to see how Tony Khan shuffles the deck of all of his broadcasters. I figure that Ian Riccoboni will do the ROH matches. That's kind of what the trend has been. But you got Excalibur, Tony, Taz, Ian, cast of thousands. And so we'll see how that works out. I'm looking forward to it. Really am.
Well, I'm looking forward to today's episode, which, of course, is brought to you by Geico. We're proud to say that Geico is a sponsor of this show, and they've been with us each and every week this year. Here's a question for you. How would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Well, of course you would. After all, who doesn't love a great deal, right? And when it comes to great rates on insurance for all the things in your life, well, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, your truck, your motorcycle, your boat, and your RV. Even help with homeowners, condo, or renters coverage, and you can save even more with a special discount when you bundle your coverages. Plus, add in the easy-to-use Geico mobile app, the available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more, and choosing to switch to Geico becomes an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote or contact your local agent and get started seeing how much you could save. Our topic today is something that Tony Schiavone and I just talked about, Clash of the Champions 21. And I'm bringing this to the table here for you and I today. He and I did a watch along earlier in the week, but we're going to actually break down the news and notes around the company and talk about what's going on in WCW, because we're about to get to a critical point. I think this is your next to last Clash of the Champions.
Yeah.
I think you wind up being out of there after the January Clash, which was at the Mecca Arena over in Milwaukee.
Correct.
But this is your next to last one, so it's almost Cowboys' last stand, if you will, and a lot of moving parts. We're fresh off of Halloween Havoc 92, which you can check out in the archives. That's essentially going to be the swan song for Jake Roberts, although we didn't know it at the time. He's going to wind up checking himself into the Betty Ford Clinic. We'll talk about all that and a lot more. Let's talk about Bill Shaw, though. He calls a meeting on October 29th, 1992, to discuss the declining ratings. And as it's been pointed out numerous times, pro wrestling's primary value to the superstation since the beginning of time has been that it's a show that can be produced relatively cheaply, but yet still deliver strong ratings. And Meltzer would say for years, the show was the highest rated program on cable TV, and even in the more recent years, among the highest rated shows for the station. But that's no longer the case. And maybe the ratings have fallen to a point to where TBS can take a popular old-timey 1960s comedy rerun or a strong movie that has on its shelf.
Yep.
These are things that are no additional cost and maybe get a larger audience than pro wrestling. There apparently were some complaints about the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view show, and I guess some of the viewers were upset that the snake bit Jake Roberts' face, and maybe they complained to the cable operators about excessive violence. I don't know. That seems a little
Weak.
silly to me. Yeah. But the ratings falling, boy, that's got to be alarming when it starts to say, hey, man, we could just throw Andy Griffith on and it whoop y'all's ass.
Yeah, that's about right. Our John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of their Christmas with the Duke shows, specials, and things like that. So, yeah, it was, you knew that she was going to drop at some point. They couldn't continue to, to embrace the ratings or lack thereof. So it was just a matter of time, and before everybody had to come to Jesus meeting, and so we had that meeting with Shaw, and here we are.
It's unfortunate that that's where the promotion is at this point. I mean, you got a lot of hardworking folks who really know, love, and care about professional wrestling, but I don't know if it's a mismatch of things. Let's talk through it. We're WCW now without our crown jewel. I mean, for a long time, the guy who drove ratings and sold tickets and was Ric Flair, and he's no longer here. And now, because the company's been suffering all these losses, they bring in Bill Watts thinking, hey, he'll write the books for us and he'll, cut some costs and get things in line, right-sized, if you will. But boy, the house shows just continue to dwindle. I mean, around this time, you guys were running spot shows in elementary schools. So it's probably as bad a business WCW had ever been, but that's not to necessarily pick on WCW. It's not as if the WWF has all their answers. In 1992, you would see exoduses from the Ultimate Warrior, from Hulk Hogan, from Roddy Piper, on and on and on. You saw lots of folks. Sid Vicious all say, no, I'm out of here. And I know that we talk about this every so often, but at the time, were you thinking, hey, man, this is cyclical, it'll come back? Or are you thinking, this is doomsday, and I might need to update my resume?
Well, I don't think I went that far, but it wasn't a fun place to work.
Right.
And I knew that if I had opportunities to go elsewhere, and the elsewhere is pretty simple, WWE, WWF, whatever. So, but I hadn't given that a lot of thought, but it certainly was a viable option. I just thought that, we just got to get somebody over, somebody that can move the needle, get people talking, and we hadn't found that formula exactly. Quite frankly, it just wasn't there. So I don't know what I was thinking, other than my checks are cashing, and I enjoyed living in Atlanta a lot, but it was some challenging times to figure out what you're going to do and how we're going to do it. And Cowboy was brought in to be the answer, and unfortunately, it became more of the became more of the problem than the solution.
The hits keep on coming for Jake Roberts because of this backlash, I suppose, of the Sting match at Halloween Havoc 92. WCW is going to respond by having Bill Watts do a promo, if you will, saying that the reptile has been banned from WCW. The idea that you remove the snake from the Jake the Snake persona, even as a prop for interviews, boy, that diminishes the whole thing, does it not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, Jake was very identified with the snake. His big run at WWF at the time was significant, but the snake was an important part of the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would say maybe the most important part. I mean, it added to the spectacle, that's for sure.
Yeah, that and the DDT. The snake and the
course.
DDT were the two calling cards. And but let's also don't forget that all this time that Bill Cowboy was positioning Jake to be the number one heel in the company, and which was a good choice. I've always been high on Jake's work, but let's not forget the fact that he was dealing with drug and alcohol issues all this time.
No doubt.
And it was tough. It was tough to get through all that stuff. So, but we'll discuss that a little bit more. But the bottom line was that one of our top guys that was anointed as the top heel certainly had his own personal challenges to deal with, and that made it really doubly troublesome.
So not only do we have, a personality conflict, if you will, because Jake thought he came to WCW with an understanding of how much money he was going to make after he had met with Kip Fry. And then, of course, Bill Watts is actually running things by the time Jake actually shows up. We're not honoring that old contract. I don't care who you talk to. Here's the offer we can do. So those guys just never really did G-Haw, as we might say here in the South.
That's right.
But for whatever reason, we still continue to do business. Maybe because of the way he left the WWF, and maybe he's just looking for spots to go. He finds himself in a promo with Sting, but when he's asked to do the honors, if you will, at Clash, or not Clash, but Halloween Havoc 92, apparently, according to the Observer, having the snake bite his face was his idea. Meltzer would say this. But supposedly the finish was Robert's idea because he felt that by having the snatch latch onto his face, it would be so shocking that the audience, quote unquote, wouldn't remember that he had just done a clean job. While there is truth to that assumption of what people would remember, those in the decision-making position have to take the blame for allowing Roberts to work out his finish because it altered the desired result, which is that nobody remembers Sting won, and he got no benefit from winning at a time when he needed a strong win, since he's done jobs on the two previous big shows. And this to me is just part and parcel, maybe what's wrong with wrestling at times. We're focusing maybe on the wrong things here. And when we do that, maybe sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot, because had Jake not insisted, well, if the snake bites my face, that'll protect me, it would have been better for Sting, and maybe he wouldn't have lost the use of the snake on TV, which is a big part of his act. This is shooting yourself in the foot a little bit here, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a big part of the gimmick was the snake, what was in the bag, and all this mystery and the drama surrounding it. And then you eliminate that drama. It's tough. So it was a interesting situation to find yourself in. I had great confidence that Jake could get the job done, but I just it was just kind of crazy as a head screw. Come on. So it was tough. It was tough, Connie. It didn't help our situation. It didn't help with continuity. It didn't help with anything, quite frankly. And so you're dealing with a guy that's got these serious drug and alcohol issues, and he's trying to stay straight enough to get to work and do his business. but it was just unfortunate. It was in hindsight, it was the wrong decision. Somebody
Right.
else should have gotten that spot that was a little bit more reliable and that did not have drug and alcohol issues. I felt badly for Jake because he's been in trouble with that, and I know today he's clean and sober.
Yes.
Last I heard, last I saw, he was great. So, but it was a tough run for us, and all about the booking and all that good stuff. It just was tough, man. It was tough to deal with, but we had to deal with it. Sting had to deal with it. To a lesser degree, the fans had to deal with it. They didn't know how bad all these things were. So, but we're just battling to get through and to hopefully get something hot, something that people will talk about and will want to see more of. And that was kind of the bottom line of this whole thing. What can we do to create an atmosphere and an environment that the fans, the viewers, will want to see more of? And we kept looking, but we didn't find it. It was unsettling for me because I knew that things weren't right. I knew that things were tentative at best. So it was daunting, Connie, to say the least. And it was hard to get fired up to go to work. Then you go out there and you do your best, obviously, but it was very, very challenging. I've used that word a lot, but every day it was that way. Every day there was another political bullshit. It just was not fun to go to work. And maybe that's what encouraged me to start thinking about, well, maybe I should look elsewhere, because this apparently isn't going to work out as quickly as we hoped. And Eric made a decision. When did Eric come in on this whole process?
After Watts is out. So early 93.
Yeah. So, and Eric wanted to make changes, and as is his prerogative, but we just didn't know how the end was going to play out. It's like a finish that nobody knew,
right?
And we're not going to tell you, type thing.
Well, it's going to obviously come to a head with Jake and Bill, and I'm sure since they started off on the wrong foot, not really trusting each other, and now there have been some reliability issues with Jake, and he's obviously struggling with substances, and now there's backlash about the snake, and you can't use the snake. I'm sure Jake being told, yeah, we can't pay you what we wanted to pay you, and we're going to put you in this big program with Sting, and you're going to lose, and okay, we'll do your finish. Well, hey, that didn't work, so now you can't use the snake. I see why Jake is like, I don't know about this.
But he didn't have a lot of, Connie, he didn't have a lot of options.
No, he had burned a bridge with the WWF. So at this point, all that's going to be left for him is independence in Mexico. And he makes some money in Mexico, but I think as the story goes, he maybe spent a lot of it at a strip club the same night. So good for him. He had some fun.
Yeah. Right. Well, it was crazy. It was crazy times, man. And I don't know what you go back in hindsight and look at things retrospectively. I think a lot of us would agree that, we made the wrong decision. I don't know that any of us knew the depth of this addiction, and everything was it's kind of out of kilter in the sense that, wouldn't you think you get the guy help before you invested big money in him and put him on top? I think so. So. Solve your problem, and because he's not going to solve this problem isn't going to be solved in the manner that we were approaching it. So, but I thought that Jake Hire was a good one, but I wish we'd have known just how bad things really were with him in his personal life and his the drugs and the alcohol and so forth and so on. So it was a tough deal, man. Tough deal.
Well, here's something that's easy this holiday season. It's never too early to play that holiday music. It's never too early to start thinking about gifts, whether it's for a friend or the friends in your pants. You can make this season be jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favor. Use the Lawnmower 4.0 to avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Then add in Manscaped's top-of-the-line shower products, and you'll have the people thinking, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack, and you should too. Look nice when you get naughty by going to manscaped.com and use the code Jim Ross for free shipping and 20%.
Yeah, baby.
Manscaped Platinum Package 4.0 is a one-stop shop for the man who deserves it all. It has everything needed to help you deck the halls from face to balls, just in time for mistletoe season. The Platinum Package has each product from the best-selling Performance Package Plus Ultra Premium Body Wash, the Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner, the Ultra Premium Deodorant. How about the Lawnmower 4.0, man? That and the Weed Whacker are gonna wrap up all of your needs for those unsightly hairs, whether they're in your nose or your ears or anywhere else. The proprietary advanced skin safe technology is going to protect those delicate little holes. Oh, and how about this 4000K LED light? You'll be able to light up the way like Rudolph, baby. And now that you've groomed your candy cane, it's time to make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with these shower products. The shower gear is sulfate-free, vegan, and it's made to leave your skin feeling hydrated, smelling fresh. Doesn't stop at the shower, though. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant has changed Tony Schiavone's life. Lois is letting him sleep in the house. Nice. Crop Reviver, boy, it's all Eric Bischoff needed to keep his boys out of the water. And once these products touch your sack, you'll never go back. The Platinum Package 4.0 is sitting under the tree, and it's guaranteed to put anyone in the holiday spirit. And by the way, for the perfect stocking stuffer, get that brand new Body Buffer, an incredible body scrubber that makes exfoliating easy, and it's a lot cleaner than that dirty ass old loofah. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code JimRoss at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Just use the promo code JimRoss. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays.
Absolutely. It's a great gift. It comes self-contained. It's got all those elements and all those features that Connie just mentioned. It's a great gift. And I'm a very, I'm a thorough user of all the products from Manscaped. They ship great. They last well. It's just a good thing, man. So if you're looking for a gift for your buddy or yourself or something you can suggest to your significant other, this is your answer. So, and you get 20% off, not bad, and free shipping. So good stuff. Great gift idea that you should consider.
By the way, not just a great gift for yourself, Jim, a great gift that keeps on giving. Smooth balls are the gifts that keeps on giving. So let's mention some other big news and notes at the time, Jim. This is a big story, man. There's a squash match that happens in Augusta, Georgia. It's October 27th. Big Van Vader is going to unfortunately injure Joe Thurman, who the Observer believes is either his first or second match here. And because of that, maybe he doesn't really know how to take the power bomb. And when it happens, Thurman is initially paralyzed from the move. Watts gives the guys a speech before TV on November 2nd and tells them it's a work. Don't be so brutal. Please don't injure the enhancement talent. Of course, I think he used a different word for him, but still, we know that eventually Joe Thurman came around and was in a better place. And we know that according to what we've heard from Mick Foley and a bunch of other folks, that Vader was pretty upset about this. He never intended to hurt anybody and would visit him in the hospital and all that. And talk to me a little bit about what you remember about Joe Thurman and this really unfortunate circumstance.
Well, this whole memory kind of got foggy and lost in the shuffle. I didn't know Joe Thurman. They would bring in several enhancement talents to work with the stars and get the stars their wins. But it was one of those deals where you just kind of hold your breath and hope this poor son of a gun isn't permanently paralyzed. Obviously, that was the biggest concern. So it was a daunting day in Albany, and thank God that Joe Thurman got back on his feet, literally.
Well, yes, absolutely.
No pun intended, by the way.
It was a worldwide taping. It only went 2 minutes and 10 seconds. It was even a handicap match, 2-on-1. Joe Thurman was teaming with TC McCoy. And listen, I know that Vader had a reputation for working stiff and he wanted it to look good, but I don't think anybody intends a consequence like this.
No, absolutely not. And the thing about taking a power bomb, you still end up in the flat back bump category. And so one of the last things you're going to consider is, does this guy know how to take a power bomb? Well, does he know how to take a flat back bump? if we answer that question is no, he doesn't know how to take a flat back bump, then somebody did a piss poor job of bringing him in and utilizing him. So, but really, it's hard to fathom that you don't know how to take a flat back bump, and that's kind of what it all boiled down to. And Leon's so big and powerful that Joe Thurman wasn't ready for it, and thank God, as I said, he kicked out literally later on.
Thank goodness for that.
Yep.
It's reported here that the Steiners will be going to the WWF in early 1993. We touched on the fact that they were unhappy on our most recent episode from this era.
Mhm.
But did you perceive this as being a major blow?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Steiners were probably at that time one of the top tag teams in the entire business, and so to lose talents of that magnitude, that level, never was a good thing. So, but it wasn't a surprise, Conrad. It was not a surprise. There was, even though WWE, WWF, whatever the initials were at that point in time, were what they were, you know, I felt that was a huge loss. My dream program was always going to be the, Doc and Gordy versus the Steiners. I thought that's something that would represent what Cowboys' philosophy was, the image that he wanted to rebuild WCW, and those four guys are nothing short of phenomenal. So, but it was not a surprise to me. Every talent wants stability, and there was so much going on, and you couldn't get a straight answer in WCW more often than not. So it was tough, man. It was hard to put your arms around.
What about Sid? It makes the dirt sheets, if you will, that he had been speaking with All Japan. That's hard to even imagine, Sid working for All Japan. But he says, "Hey, you guys need to make your move. I'm talking with Bill Watts next week." Of course, we know Sid doesn't wind up coming into WCW until like the spring of '93, when both Watts and yourself are gone. Do you think Watts would have been a Sid guy?
I think there was a good chance, yeah, if Sid would listen to him and take coaching, and understand his limitations. So Cowboy knew how to book a big man. He knew how to book a monster heel. He did know that. So it was, yeah, I think Cowboy would have probably got along with Sid okay. And Sid wasn't an easy guy to get along with because he was quiet more often than not. Then he would go on a tangent of blurting stuff out and so forth. But he was box office. He's that guy that walks through the airport that you can't take your eyes off of.
Right.
And so, and certainly in our situation there, Sid was worth the gamble. He was worth the roll of the dice without question.
Let's talk about Jim Cornette. Of course, we know he winds up quitting the company after Halloween Havoc 1990, but he does come back in January of '93. But before that happens, we'll call it October of '92. You jump on the WCW hotline and mention that Jim Cornette was in Atlanta, and it's written in the Observer that, quote, Cornette threw a fit about Ross reporting that on Mike Tenay's radio show that same night, although Cornette and Watts had met. Do you remember Corny being pretty upset with you that you leaked it, that maybe he was in town?
I don't remember that particular incident. If Dave reported it, he reported it because he talked to Cornette, and if Corny was pissed off, I wasn't aware of that I can recall. It sure is true.
What, Cornette being upset? You just assume that's true? I can't believe that.
Yeah. I'll go as far as to say this. Cowboy would have been well served if he had made Cornette the booker.
Instead of just being part of a committee, just let him handle it.
Committees don't work, Connie.
I agree.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, bud. I don't need, how many people are going to have to season up the cornbread dressing? Right. Too many cooks in the kitchen don't work. So that's how I would have played that hand. Cornette would have been a great booker, and he would have made chicken salad out of the chicken doo-doo that we were living with. But that didn't happen either, unfortunately. But that's what I'd have done if I were a Cowboy. Cornette would have been the booker, and he's writing TV, and all that. And I think we would have had a much better outcome than we did.
You know, you mentioned it. I got to ask, cornbread dressing, the JR favorite every single Thanksgiving. What are you doing for Thanksgiving this year, Jim?
Well, I'm flying back on Thanksgiving Day from Chicago.
That's right.
Yeah, we're doing Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. We're in Chicago, which has kind of become a tradition. Tony Khan's got a home there, and so he likes to be in Chicago on the holidays, which is cool. And then I'll fly back home after we'll do live Rampage, or excuse me, live Dynamite, and then a taped version for that Friday on after that, and then fly home on Thanksgiving. So there's nothing better, Conrad, quite frankly, to celebrate the season than to be in the O'Hare Chicago Airport on Thanksgiving.
Well, let me just mention, I don't know that you know this, but you can get a nonstop from Chicago to Huntsville, and my mom's got a whole vat of cornbread dressing.
A vat.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's a.
I know I invite you every year, and every year
I
you
know.
say I'll think about it, and then you don't come. But hey, we got cornbread dressing. Damn it!
I know. Hey, one year I appreciated your mama so much. You guys shipped me some.
Yeah, how about that?
That was awesome. It made my. I don't really need anything else. You know, I don't need turkey or chicken or whatever. I like it and I'll eat it.
Yeah.
But man, those sides on Thanksgiving is where the money is for Ole JR. You know, the cornbread
Sweet chicken
dressing.
casserole and
Yeah.
squash casserole and broccoli casserole. All the casseroles come out.
Casserole your ass off.
Yes, sir.
Casserole your ass off. And but I appreciated that. She was a sweet lady, still is, obviously. You're lucky you still got your mama.
Yes, sir.
And embrace that opportunity to give her a big old hug every now and then. But I remember getting my dressing delivered, and I was so happy. Hell, I ate it for like 3 days. I ate it for like 3 days, so it was good. It was good. You just gotta, you just gotta enjoy what's there, and that was very appreciated, and I'm very grateful for what she did for me that Thanksgiving. And she wants to send some more. I live the same address.
Well, you got our address, and we got a whole vat of it. I'm smoking the turkey. We got all the ladies in the fam working on all the other stuff and all the sides. But mom's cornbread dressing is the superstar. And man, you get it nonstop. Come on, let's go. Speaking of Chicago, you guys ran a show on Halloween in Chicago back in 1992, and you sold kids tickets for 66 cents. And despite all that, we had 2,000 folks there.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the same thing, and I know it's beating a dead horse, so to speak. That's an ugly sight or ugly visual. But I don't know, man. It's just it's just so frustrating on things that we were doing, and when you look back at it, there's things we could have fixed if we had hindsight, being 2020. But the Cornette idea, just something I thought about, but Corny would have embraced himself. He would have engulfed himself in that booking. And when Cornette and the Midnight Express were having all their great success in Mid-South, Corny was an active participant in the creative. He had ideas. And so I think that he would have been really good in that creative role. But looking back, my point is there are things that were going on that we could have fixed, but we didn't. And so then the question is always going to be, well, why didn't you fix it? And that's the best question of all. I don't have a clue. I don't. So much politics. Everybody's going, I'm going to leave. I'm going to stay. I'm going to go, whatever. It just got to be insanity. And Cowboy, I love Cowboy. He's my guy. But, he didn't make things any easier sometimes in how he communicated with talent. We have to understand that talents change, and they have to all be communicated individually. You can't rubber stamp how you interact with talent. Everybody's got a different button to push, and Cowboy didn't care to look for the buttons.
with lower monthly payments. We can knock out your car payment. We can get rid of your second mortgage. We can pay off all your credit cards. We can get you the cash you need to turn your house into your dream home and do it with no money out of pocket. Don't get stressed out about the holidays. Just go to savewithconrad.com right now. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And it just takes a few minutes to get started. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Serious business. Get a lower monthly payment. Make this the best Christmas ever. And skip your next 2 house payments at savewithconrad.com. Let's talk about some of the things Cowboys trying here. I think we both really appreciate and respect Ron Simmons and love the decision that Cowboy made to crown the first ever African-American world heavyweight champion in Ron Simmons. But boy, it ain't really working. Jacksonville, Danville, Knoxville, and Milwaukee. Think about the size of those markets, especially Milwaukee. Draw 400 to 600 fans. And it's with Ron Simmons and the Barbarian on top.
Well, there's part of your issue. The booking sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Barbarian's a sweetheart of a guy. Thank God for everybody else in this world. But he was not ready. He wasn't over. And the story, there's no story there. The story was simply hanging your shingle on the fact that Ron Simmons is the champion. And you can only take that horse to the water so many times before ain't nobody drinking no more. And I think Ron was, I love the chance, the booking. I love the creative of getting Ron in that position. But to be frank about it, Ronnie was just not ready. He hadn't been nurtured and, positioned right and all those things, Conrad. So it was ill-fated from the start. After the initial celebration in the CNN Center and all those things, the bloom fell quickly off the rose. And Ron Simmons is one of the guys in this business. If I had a territory today, I would hire Ron Simmons as a agent because I think he's that good, and I think he's reliable, and he commands respect from the talents. He's just a special guy, and I thought he would have probably brought a nice mainstream sports feel to the locker room, and if that was the case. So it was hard. It's hard to figure out that deal, but when you look back at it, it's really simple. Ronnie was if anybody was going to be the first black heavyweight champion, Ron Simmons was the perfect solution.
Yes.
It just was the fact that he didn't have a chance to get over to where people said, oh man, finally, Ron Simmons is the champ. He looked great. He sounded great. He had an amazing pedigree, but he wasn't ready for that role. And that's kind of how I look at booking. Booking's like a director or a producer casting a part for the part. That's booking, casting, booking, same thing. And so I think that Ron it was before he wasn't ready for this role. So we put him in a position that he was fighting from underneath. Ronnie was fighting. He was fighting from underneath. He wasn't being, look at him. He's amazing. And I still think the world of him. He's a smart guy. But we didn't do Ronnie any favors, quite frankly, Conrad, in this whole ill-fated title run.
Somebody else who's looking to get an opportunity, maybe, is Johnny Ace. It's written in the Observer that there were feelers sent out to Johnny Ace about maybe working here in between his Japan tours. Maybe this is to replace Terry Gordy since he's recently left the company. Is this a Bill Watts idea? A big, good looking dude who's making a name for himself in Japan. Let's bring him over here and bring that hard hitting style here. I mean, does it feel like a Bill Watts guy? And it didn't wind up happening, but if it would have happened, would he have clicked with Watts? Would this have been a good fit for WCW? How could it have looked for him to come in here?
It should have clicked. He had Johnny Ace had a good rapport with Baba, so that would bode well working with a Cowboy, similar alpha male type bosses. So I don't know. I think, Conrad, that Johnny Ace and Cowboy would have gotten along all right. You know, Johnny Ace was a great politician.
Yeah.
He worked the locker room, and he got the most out of his attendance. So I don't know how that would have worked out. He was going to be limited on his in-ring abilities. Wasn't a bad worker, but he wasn't a on top main event level pay-per-view main event level star. He wasn't. But him getting along with Cowboy, I mean, Johnny Ace knew how to play the game. I saw that firsthand. I hired this son of a gun. I brought him to WWE. So, and how'd that work out for JR? Not so great.
I love you for that. You work with Jake Roberts as an announcer on the taping that's going to air on November 7th. It's going to be Jake's last appearance with the company. He checks himself into Betty Ford just a few days later. But, I mean, tell me how he was as a commentator, working as an announcer capacity. We've all seen that he had a great mind for the business. We've all seen his promos. We've all seen his matches and storytelling. But as a quote-unquote commentator, a talking head, if you will, how was Jake?
Creative and had a unique insight, had a distinctive voice. There's no reason he could have been a really outstanding broadcaster if that had been his focus, because he had product knowledge. You know, you don't have anybody, if you do, let's get rid of them, on your staff that doesn't have product knowledge, that doesn't understand what they're selling and how it positively affects your customer base. Conrad Thompson's not going to have that person around.
No,
can't do it. So, but I thought that it's just, I mean, come on, it's just it's a new skill set. I think people think it's easy. It's not easy to be a wrestling broadcaster. I've mentioned before, you know, gosh, I've had chances to do. I did the Falcons and the NFL. I did the XFL, the season of that, back in the original run. But pro wrestling's the hardest thing to call.
Yeah.
Because you got to add drama, sizzle, showbiz, all those things to this situation. And a lot of people can't handle that. And you got to sell, tickets go on sale Saturday, or you're still to come tonight, or, you know, so it made a little bit more work for me, but nothing I couldn't handle and nothing I didn't mind doing. But Jake had a significant and distinctive upside, Conrad, as a broadcaster, if he had stayed that course. But of course, you know, you get wrestling in your blood and you still think you got one more great run in you. Everybody thinks that. And, but I enjoyed working with him. He was unpredictable, and I like that.
I love it. The next thing we're going to talk about here is Scotty Flamingo. He's going to come out and interrupt the Johnny B. Bad interview. Bad's going to put the lips on Scotty's cheek, and Scott responds by knocking him out with a roll of quarters. And Meltzer would say maybe they're heading towards a tape fist match because of the boxing background. Of course, we know it's actually setting up a boxing match at the Clash of the Champions. And this is kind of interesting. Scotty Flamingo, who had been, you know, trying to establish this gimmick, he's got quite the trio with him, or quite the pair with him. Diamond Dallas Page and Vinny Vegas with him. What a group of talent on one side. Future ECW world champion, future WCW world champion, future WWF world champion, just a handful of years after this. Meanwhile, Johnny B. Bad is, well, doing an interesting gimmick. You know, he's doing his best little Richard impression, thanks to Dusty Rhodes. But he's got a legit Golden Gloves background. But I just never understood the boxing component of a wrestling match. Like it's going to look silly, is it not?
Well, yeah. Here's the thing: it had no build.
Right.
Everything you just said about Mark Merrow's background and his amateur boxing skill set, you know, being in the boxing world for a good while, having success as an amateur and in New York State in the Golden Gloves competition. But it never got over because everything got fast tracked.
Right.
One of the biggest problems that promoters and bookers and all these guys have nowadays, they get in too big a hurry. They have no patience. And if we'd have showed Mark boxing or training for a few weeks, or Scotty Flamingo doing the same, then it would have been good. But what you got here, Conrad, at the end of the day, without sounding like a turd, is both guys, no matter how many vignettes you did, were over.
Right.
And neither guy you're going to get to the level where they can headline. I just don't think that was there. So, it was bound for failure. And we have so many of those illustrations. When the match is booked and you say, well, that's a pretty good booking. That's pretty creative, but it's just not good booking. You got to build things. It's like Saturday night. Moxley and MJF are going to have the title match. There in Newark, but there's been a long build to this thing.
Yeah.
Wrestling fans love to build anticipation, and all good stories have that element in it for sure. So, but we didn't have that. It was just not good booking. It was just too fast track, too quick. So if I was a booker, could I have made the match a little bit more interesting? Yeah, because I'd have done vignettes and I'd have introduced the audience to what these guys are doing, and then I'd have got to my, shot the angle, and then we'd have had the match. But we were too big a hurry. There's a gun to everybody's head all the time. So, and that's not good for the creative process to have that much pressure on you. It's just, you can't think things through. Just doesn't work well.
What's fun about going back and watching this stuff is you never know who of these guys at the time is going to wind up being a big deal. As we know, as we said, Raven is going to be born out of this. Diamond Dallas Page is going to be a world champ. Diesel and Kevin Nash and the NWO. But you get to see these guys before they were stars. And that's one of the things I enjoy about TitleMatchNetwork.com, where you can go ahead right now and take advantage of their holiday special. This episode is brought to you by TitleMatchNetwork.com, and I want you to save 50% on all new memberships when you use the coupon code CONRAD. It's all lowercase at checkout. This includes every pay-per-view and video on demand. They've got hundreds of exclusive new live streams every year, a near endless amount of pay-per-views, shoot interviews, documentaries, and more. One of the biggest collections of women's wrestling content on the planet, plus a ton of originals from Title Match. They got a brand new interview series with legends like Greg the Hammer Valentine, Sabu, The Godfather, and more. And by the way, Title Match Network is the only streaming platform to bring you the entire WrestleCade weekend. Live podcasts from like RVD and Shane Douglas. That's happening on the 25th. How about the WrestleCade Super Show on the 26th? It's got the Big Show and DDP and Kurt Angle and Eric Bischoff. Ladies Night Out number 11. Well, that's Iva Elise and Sue Young, Tessa Blanchard, and more. That's going down on the 27th. But AML Wrestling on the 27th has something really crazy. What about Nick Gage taking on George South? Oh, man, I got to see that. TitleMatchNetwork.com. The perfect gift for the holiday season. Take advantage of this holiday special. Save 50% on all new memberships when you use our coupon code CONRAD. That's all lowercase at checkout. If you don't like what you see, cancel anytime. That's TitleMatchNetwork.com with the coupon code CONRAD, all lowercase at checkout, and you'll save 50% on all your new memberships.
Yeah, what a unique concept, Conrad. Unique concept. It's kind of like it's like going through the drive-thru. You get anything you want.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Totally agree. Let's talk about something else pretty cool. We got Medusa. She's still a heel managing Rick Rude, and Rude is cutting promos on Eric Watts. And I guess that he's like the de facto babyface when feuding with Paulie Dangerously, trying to build to a one-on-one match at the Clash. So Eric Watts is being programmed with Rick Rude. And
bad booking.
Yes.
It don't make any sense.
No.
It wasn't there. And once again, we're trying to build something. You think Rick Rude wanted to work with Eric? Shit, no. Well, he's green and he's young and people are looking at him in a unique way because he's quote unquote the boss's son. And pro wrestling's been wrought with that shit for generations. I mean, your good buddy Jeff Jarrett's a product of that.
Yeah.
His family was so deeply invested in pro wrestling that, and so he got a little head start on the rest of the race. But that happens numerous times.
Right.
So, but I don't know. Rude was so miserable. God bless him. And just God bless him is all I can say. And look, I've known Eric since he was a little boy. This ain't like one of those. Oh, I just met him last week at catering. I've known him forever.
Right.
I helped him get his football scholarship at Louisville because I had a chance meeting with Howard Snellenberger, who was the coach at that time at Louisville. We sat beside each other on an airplane flight, Snellenberger and I. So and became half-ass buddies. But I told him about this 6'6" quarterback that's got a big old arm. His dad was a former athlete, et cetera, and he had a good look. And a great kid. He really is a great kid. His daughter. You kept up at all with how Eric's daughter is doing on the hardwood for Navy?
No, I haven't.
She's a player, man. I mean, she is a player. So check it out sometimes, folks. He's I follow Eric on Facebook and just get news and updates and see how everybody's doing. But his daughter's a tall girl. She's probably 6'2", beautiful. And she's committed and signed and is playing for the Naval Academy, which, bravo to her. Bravo, because she could have gone to school anywhere she wanted. She was a great high school player.
Sydney Watts is who we're talking about. You can follow her on Twitter at Sydney Watts, SYDNEEWATTSS. She's a big star, I guess, man. 28 points the other day. Wears number 34 for Navy. She's a junior. She's a guard. So yeah, that's great to hear about, what these guys and their families are up to now. That's pretty cool, man, to know that she's doing well for Navy basketball.
Well, I'm just here to serve, Conrad. I equal back patter for all armed forces.
There you go. Well, let's talk about what's next here. We've got the King of the Cable tournament, and I just want to hear your thoughts on the King of the Cable tournament. I mean, I guess this is eventually like the WW or WCW version of the King of the Ring, but what do you think of the name King of the Cable?
Well, that's kind of what we built our mantra. Our mantra's built on cable television. Turner was the big dog in the cable world, so I didn't have a problem with it.
I thought it meant ropes. This whole time I thought it meant like the cables or the ropes.
Oh, wow. Well, not me, but I understand where you could think that.
Yeah.
But no, it was cable TV, and decent idea. It's still going to depend on the booking, and you're still booking a turn. It's not, the gimmick is not going to get you over.
Right.
The talent's what's going to get you over and get ratings more specifically. And I don't know, man. It's just that King of Cable thing worked out okay, but still you're working with the same team, the same talents. And how many of them are quote unquote over? They're not. They're not that many over. And matter of fact, there's a lot more that aren't over than were over.
Let's talk about Ricky Steamboat. He's going to interrupt a Big Van Vader promo here. They didn't have a lot of matches on TV. I know they wrestled a DQ match at a worldwide taping, and I think they did one in 93, maybe a couple in 93. But that feels interesting. It mostly winds up being a house show match. What do you think of the Ricky Steamboat standing up to Vader because of what he did to Joe Thurman? I mean, it's a good story. He's the perennial baby face and all that. It doesn't really go anywhere on TV. It feels like that could have led to a big confrontation, or was the office not sold that Steamboat would stick around, or what are you thinking?
Well, I don't think they had their deal done. I think it was, there's still things to get I's to dot and T's to cross, etc. But nobody ever doubted the fact that Steamboat could get over and have great matches. I mean, hell, fire. He's one of the, depending on who you ask and what time of the day you ask him, Ricky Steamboat's one of the one of the very top baby faces ever in wrestling. So I getting a Steamboat in your card. It's like you asked me earlier about were we concerned to lose the Steiners? Well, of course we were,
Right.
because you can't replace that team with another. You can't get the eraser out and pencil somebody in that's going to be as effective as the Steiners.
It's not plug and play. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a tough deal. But Steamboat was. I always thought Steamboat would have been a great get for us to sign up long term, solid. He could hit. Talents like to talk to him because he could help them with their matches. Ricky was a proud athlete. He stayed in great shape. All the right things. Now you're talking about getting your house in order, so to speak. You're getting new players on the field. You're getting new guys in the game. And the guys that are coming in the game some of them were pretty damn good, specifically talking about Steamboat here. So, I wish that could have been done better, but it wasn't. And that's some of that just comes back to communication. Sometimes Cowboy he wasn't a great negotiator. I know that he had a mandate to lower cost.
Right.
I mean, all kinds of shit happened. They took the water where you get your water, the big tub of water, and that's too expensive. So the water in the office was eliminated, for example. You really believe that's going to change the course of your budget? No. It's kind of silly. So anyhow, Steamboat would have been a great long-term addition in my view.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a long-term addition in Jake Roberts. As we mentioned a little earlier, he winds up checking himself into the Betty Ford Rehab Center. Disappointing that this is the way it winds up for Jake, but glad that he's seeking help. He goes in on a Tuesday, and immediately at the next TV taping, Bill Watts announces Jake Roberts is no longer with the company, but we're pulling for him. So I think both Jake and Bill were ready to be done with each other. Unfortunately, this is something that Jake's going to deal with for a long time. And as you said earlier, thankfully he's pulled the nose up and he's in a much better place in his life. But how do you first hear the news? Hey man, I know Jake's fresh off our main event and you just did TV with him 2 days ago, but he's gone.
Yeah. Well, I want to say I was shocked. I would be lying to you in the audience. It's just inevitable. You can't live two lives. And the life of a drug abuser and someone dependent on drugs and alcohol, it becomes just a matter of time. It's the old sand through the hourglass. The sand keeps drifting through the hourglass. Eventually, you got to change. And so I wasn't shocked. I was a little surprised at the timing of it, because really, I don't think Cowboy would have put Jake with me on TV as a broadcaster if he had plans at that time to get rid of him. So anyway, like we said earlier, you said it's better. The end game, the final is good because Jake is clean and sober as we speak. I did it hasn't aired yet. The Mid-South TV thing on Vice. I liked. It seemed like we had a good day, and I taped some stuff for those guys just here recently that you arranged, and I thank you for that. Haven't got my check yet. No, I'm kidding. Conrad, I'm going to bill you, buddy. No, I'm kidding. Everything's good, and they're doing some really good work, quite frankly. I think Rock's people, Brian Gewirtz and so forth, have made a huge difference in that franchise. I think the editing's better. I watched this week. I watched 3 episodes. Portland, the Polynesian, and I watched something else again. I can't recall what it was because it was the last one I watched. It was a late night. So I just I don't know where I was in that, but bottom line is, I just believe that we could have probably so many things. I got to get so frustrated talking about these things because we got into shit. We got into shit about ear deep
Yeah.
when we didn't have to.
Right.
When we didn't have to.
Is it a different era in regards to addiction? You know, like on the one hand, I'm sure this thing was on a collision course from the start with Jake and Bill. But the timing of Bill almost immediately saying he's no longer with WCW. And then you take a look at maybe a guy like John Moxley who had some stuff he needed to deal with, and
Right. And he did.
Tony Khan gave him the time, and he came back and he's champ. And I like that we've become a little more respectful and understanding and patient with that. Was that not really even a circumstance with Bill, just because him and Jake were always just going to be oil and water?
Yeah, I think so. They didn't. Just old wounds don't heal sometimes.
Right.
Sticking from a guy that's got an old wound that he's trying to heal. Yeah, it was a short term. But if Jake had been clean and sober and hitting the restart button, things might have really worked out a lot differently. Quite frankly, I mean, and the other thing too about Jake, now Cowboy wouldn't have done it. I don't think. See, you got a guy like Jim Cornette available. You got a guy like Jake Roberts that's available. And all those guys are, now if you're going to do a committee, the committee should be 2 people or something, not a whole damn room full of guys.
Right.
Those creative meetings at WCW were, I mean, everybody was looking at their watch to make that flight back to Charlotte. And so it was hard. It was hard to get bookings done. But we had brains there to help. We had a lot of brain power. The Cowboy, being that old school wrestler and hard headed and stubborn, he wasn't going to go ask some of these young guys to help him book. Why not? I would. That's what I'd have done. But that's not what happened.
It's not what happens. Here's what else does happen, though. Jim Herd makes a presentation on October 30th to Bill Shaw about the possibility of Herd and Jerry Jarrett working together to use the younger talents that need seasoning on USWA house shows. Now, let's remind everybody, Herd's gone. He's out of the company. Bill Watts is steering the ship, but Bill Watts still answers to Bill Shaw. So Jim Herd goes to Bill Shaw and says, why don't we put you and Jerry Jarrett together? Give these young guys some reps. On the one hand, that makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, how is Herd still hanging around? This was news to me. I didn't know this until I saw it in the Observer here. What do you remember of this? Anything?
It was off the radar, man. Off the beaten path. It wasn't discussed. I don't even know. I bet you could count the times that Cowboy and Herd met or had a meeting or whatever on one hand. So, but I didn't know it either. Herd obviously what he was trying to do, he was working on his exit and he got a severance. Maybe he thought he needed to do more things to help earn his severance. If so, an honorable thing. But I didn't know about that, and it was like a fart in church. Wasn't going to get over.
I can't wait to talk about Jim Herd a little more, but I know that, this isn't something you were really paying attention to or involved in, but Meltzer does a comparison about where the company's at and how they had been doing. And I just wanted to run it past you because before Watts becomes the guy, it's Kip Fry running the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Kip Fry was averaging 2,200 folks at the shows. He was averaging a $23,000 gate and he was getting a 2.4 rating. Bill Watts comes in and attendance goes from 2,200 to 1,800. The gate goes from 23,000 to 16,000, and the rating goes from a 2.4 to a 1.9. Buddy, percentage wise, we're way down.
Yeah, numbers don't lie, Connie.
Yeah,
the numbers don't lie, and again, the team was weak, and I just think we could all done a better job of communicating and suggesting things and things of that nature to help right our ship. But the politics, look, this is like a political deal here that we just talked about. Hurd and Jerry Jarrett, that was politics. Is Hurd looking to justify his severance and/or maybe renew a deal as a consultant? And this is one of his ideas. We know why Jerry Jarrett wanted to do it. Payday. Well, not for, well, we love the business. I love the business almost as much as Connie's mama's cornbread dressing. I just love the business. Okay. Will you do it for nothing? I don't love the business that much.
Well, here's something I know you are going to love. Lucy, I can't wait to talk about this. I mean, here's the reality, folks. A lot of adults choose to use nicotine, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Yeah, this is an ad for Lucy Breakers. I'm excited to talk about it because I believe in it. If you're one of the millions of adults who use nicotine, you know that not all products are the same. There's one new product that I believe stands above the rest. Lucy Breakers are the only nicotine pouch that gives you a blast of flavor from the first moment to the last. Each pouch contains a capsule that you break open to release a rush of flavor that doesn't fade away like those other pouches. The ones that rhyme with thin. They come in so many flavors: mint, berry, citrus, mango, even espresso. And you don't even have to go to the gas station or corner store to get these. Just order online and they'll be shipped straight to your door. Every order gets free shipping. Plus, if you subscribe, you'll save 15% and never run out. So whether you use nicotine while working, creating, or playing, Lucy Breakers are the intelligent choice. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Get $10 off your first order when you use our promo code JR at checkout. And the shipping is always free. That's lucy.co. The promo code is JR to receive $10 off and free shipping. Visit lucy.co for more details. And we thank Lucy for sponsoring the podcast. Now here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. One more time, that's lucy.co. Promo code JR. Save yourself $10. Get free shipping.
Yeah, another great idea. We have smart advertisers.
We do.
They have good products, and they make sense for our audience, which is, I know we have females watching us, because Conrad's sex appeal is just overwhelming.
Listen to you.
Yeah, that's it. But I believe that we've got some of the best advertisers, not just because they're paying their tabs, but because they sell good products.
Right.
And they stand behind those products. I have yet to see one complaint of any of the advertisers that we work with.
Agree.
From a consumer. Not one. And that's just extraordinary. So we thank all of our advertisers, our sponsors, and more importantly, we thank the fans because you support them and you buy their products, and we appreciate you for that.
Let's talk about somebody else I know you appreciate. It's reported in the Observer that Van Hammer is going to be getting a big push again. I understand that a lot of people would say, well, man, this guy wasn't a good wrestler, but we're grabbing at straws here. Look at him. We're seeing him there on video here on YouTube. I mean, this could have been the WCW version of the Ultimate Warrior based on physique and crazy hair. And we're trying to make him look cool with the cool gear and the flying V guitar that shoots pyro. We're adding a lot of gimmicks to make this thing look cool, but it just doesn't work. And maybe it's as our pal Bruce always likes to say, and then the bell rang.
Yeah.
Why don't you think Van Hammer clicked? When you look at this, it feels like I understand hindsight being what it is, but when you see this, it's worth a try, right?
Well, the 8x10's worth a try.
There you go.
But like Brucey said, and then the bell rang.
Right.
He decent guy, really wanted to be a star. But again, he was pushed into action. He got pushed into the game before he was ready to play it. So he should have had another year of build. You think somebody's going to take a year to get somebody over? They sure as hell aren't today.
No.
Because nobody's got any patience, including the audience, by and large. But if we had the opportunity and the value of hindsight, the benefit of hindsight, this kid would have probably had work with him for a year, get him some wins, get him into a program that he can learn from, put him with an experienced heel that can teach him things, and let those guys get married in the house shows, and off Broadway, in other words. But that he didn't get that opportunity. How many people have we talked about in this WCW run that the same common denominator? Ron Simmons was not ready to be the champion when he was saddled with it. The other guys that we talked about that just weren't ready. And so now you got the same thing here. It's just he needed more time because his skill set was average. And I might be being kind, but he was a nice guy. He did seem to be reliable, which is huge in my book. So I don't know, man. He had something. He had charisma, but he didn't have the time. We had not given him the time to get better in the ring. He's the kind of guy that should have been at the if they had one. I don't even remember we had something like that, the power plant type deal. So I don't know, man. It's sad that we had so many of those illustrations. We got too big a hurry. The pressure was on. We had no time to take a deep breath. It was today, tomorrow. We got to get on TV this weekend, etc. So that's how I see that situation with Van Hammer. He good guy, interesting gimmick, but he couldn't play yet.
Here's some news and notes about a couple of friends of ours. Quote, the guy in the kendo outfit sparring with Medusa on video that aired on Sunday was Eric Bischoff. Bet you didn't have any idea the guy was that good with his hands and feet. So we're trying to, hype up Medusa and show her training and getting ready for this big match that she's got coming up, this Battle of the Sexes with Paul Lee. And the guy in the karate gear and the headgear and the gloves and all that, that's Eric Bischoff. And of course, at this point, he's still a C Squad announcer, but maybe that's going to change pretty soon.
Yeah, it is. Goodbye, JR. Nah. Hey. Goodbye.
It wasn't goodbye for Eric Watts, though. Meltzer would say he's actually getting pretty good considering how few matches he's had, but the push gets more unbearable by the week. Let me ask you a question. I mean it sincerely. You think if Eric Watts' last name wasn't Watts, he would have been reviled as much as he was?
Probably not.
I mean, realistically, if he was Eric Jones,
right?
I don't think people would just, when you go back and you look at his work and his presentation and understand how young he is and how new he is.
Yep.
I think he would have been given another chance. I think, and Bret Hart said it recently on one of those Tales from the Territory episodes you were talking about. In wrestling, there's almost nothing worse you could be than the son of a promoter.
Yeah.
And for him to come in and get any sort of push, everybody's going to say, well, it's because.
Yeah.
I mean, why not give the guy a chance? If he was Eric Jones, and I know people made fun of Brian Christopher not being just called Brian Lawler, but maybe that's what Lawler was trying to protect him from. I don't know. I never asked. What say you?
Well, Lawler wanted Brian to have his own identity.
Yes.
There wasn't room for two Lawlers in Memphis.
There you
go. Quite frankly, that's solid booking. And he was a talented kid. Really, Brian was really talented. He just, he had the same shit, man. Habits, and I still miss the little bastard. He's a fun to be around and really, really talented. I thought the team of he and Scotty Too Hottie was very underrated.
Oh, yeah.
They always entertained. They always had decent matches.
Big pops every night.
Every time. They had charisma. They had it. So, and sometimes it's enough. And sometimes it isn't enough. It depends on the individual and the presentation. But yeah, I think if Eric's name would have been Jones, or even better yet, Thompson. That's what I'd call.
Listen to you.
I would have. I'd have said Eric Thompson. and it sends shivers down the spine of opponents and fans alike. I'm kidding you.
My mother's maiden name was Jones, so I was kind of doing that too.
Oh, cool.
Hey, let me ask about drug testing here. It comes out in the Observer that there was a memo to all the wrestlers that they got on November 9th telling them they'll be drug tested in 2 days because Bill Watts is concerned about the use of illegal drugs within the company. And the letter specifically says we aren't testing for alcohol or marijuana. It didn't state one way or the other about steroids, although from the looks of everyone, use is way down, which I attribute to more the lack of a supply rather than conscious decisions to quit in some cases, but not all. So I like the idea that we're doing some testing, not necessarily because I think it's a performance enhancing drug that we need to monitor, but we're trying to take care of our roster and make sure that we care about our people, et cetera, et cetera. But then we don't test for alcohol and marijuana. And I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with marijuana, but boy, a lot more guys in wrestling have had issues or just in life. Like alcohol is the most readily available drug.
Right.
Did we just not think that alcohol was an issue? Were we concerned with the news media hearing that maybe there was a cocaine circumstance or something else? Or what's the rationale behind a drug test that doesn't include alcohol or marijuana?
I thought it was decent. I really did. I said this before, and I'm probably not in the popular side of the conversation or the argument. I'd a lot rather have a talent sitting in his room ordering a pizza and smoking a joint as to go to the strip bar where all these other alpha males are and put themselves in jeopardy. That's my take on it. So I think that for a start, Conrad, the thing about it, you mentioned this earlier, we didn't have a ton of information on drugs.
That's right.
Now it's an art form. I mean, there's clinics, there's interventions, there's organized companies that help do these things and help people get back on track. Back in those days, man, when you mentioned Betty Ford, can you mention another drug testing or a clinic? I can't.
No.
Betty Ford was it.
Yeah.
So now look at them. You got, every market's got a ton of places where you can go get help if you need it or want it. So knowledge is powerful. And I think that was pressure from Turner to have some sort of policy in place. And that's what Cowboy did with that drug testing. I don't think he would have done it on his own motivation. But I think the pressure from Turner corporate was what it was, and that he had to comply, and that was the compromise that he came up with.
It feels as if this drug testing, in my opinion, is probably done because we know that we've got the whole steroid trial thing hanging over us, but B, man, we just had this whole circumstance on the other channel with the Ultimate Warrior and the British Bulldog, and if they got problems, and them being the market leader, them being the WWF, it stands to reason that people might start asking questions over here too, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It had to be addressed. It was just a sign of the times. And again, the sign of the times, meaning that we're going to start traveling a road that we had not previously been on. So, but every day, more information came out about drug testing and what to watch for and all these things. But it wasn't good in this respect that it opened the door for a lot of second guessing. And I never had any talent. I wasn't head of talent relations, so I don't know exactly how all this went down, but I do know that Cowboy probably would not have done drug testing if he had not been kind of shoved in that direction.
Right.
And I did think that not testing for marijuana and alcohol was a good start.
No doubt. I do want to ask about the idea of these two guys coming on the market. Davey Boy Smith, we know, is going to wind up coming in February of '93. So when he's released from the WWF, he's not down for very long. I think his last match there was in November, and then fast forward February, here he is. He's in WCW. But what about the Warrior? Was Cowboy kind of like, hey, been there, done that? No thanks.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah.
No, it ain't worth the chance. he was, as I've said here, and I've been outspoken about this, Warrior had that great look. He was over. He had a great name identity by any name they used. But the memories of him walking out of Mid-South or UWF, whatever it was at that point in time, and going to work for Fritz down in Dallas and being tutored by Gary Hart, which is not a bad thing for the Warrior. But Watts felt a little betrayed, and I don't think he wanted to get anywhere close to reliving those moments. And the thing about it is that Warrior's reputation had not improved. Well, he used to be hard to do business with. He's not anymore. Well, that'd be a lie. He's always been hard to do business with. And when you're talking about Watts, who had very little patience and things like that, it would never have succeeded, ever.
Let's talk about the Power Hour. It's the highest rated WCW show of the weekend over Halloween. It gets a 2.0. Saturday night did a 2.0 post pay-per-view, and main event does a 1.4. And Meltzer would say the Sunday ratings are considered at the crisis stage, and the long-term future of the Sunday show is very much in doubt. You were involved in some of the syndication and things like that. Did you think maybe we were oversaturated? We had too many programs because we got Power Hour, we got main event, we got Saturday night. Is there too much here or maybe not?
There wasn't enough good.
Yeah.
I don't know that the amount of hours, if it had been good programming, would have been a bad thing at all. I think Cornette and I did a lot of the writing on Friday nights. And we also hosted the show. That was fun, quite honestly. So I don't think there's too much programming, Connie. I just think there wasn't enough good programming.
Right. Well, maybe they needed to bundle it together. I mean, that's what Geico recommends. Paul Orndorff is going to debut as a heel manager with Medusa on the November 16th TV tapings, and he's going to beat Ron Simmons by countout. And this is his very first night in, and it's a non-title match, but still, it shows you that there are big plans for Paul Orndorff. Did you think there was any juice left in Paul Orndorff? I mean, not that long ago, he was doing big business with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. No, I thought there's still some fruit on the vine for that deal. Cowboy had great respect for Paul Orndorff because Paul Orndorff, grew up in Florida. He followed Cowboy's booking and wrestling when Cowboy was working for Eddie Graham. Cowboy was probably one of Eddie's most successful bookers. Made a lot of money together, and Bill learned from the best. I mean, it's arguable the fact that many people say, insiders, that Eddie Graham had one of the best minds in all of pro wrestling before and after. He was just a genius in some of these things and could feel the audience, and so he was it was an interesting scenario that we found ourselves in that regard. So many interesting scenarios, and you can only imagine how it was to go to work every day, Conrad. It was really, really hard to stay fired up. And of course, when you got on the camera or you got the red light came on, everything kind of push everything to the side. I wasn't going to worry about what the long-term effects of the company by the next thing I say on segment 3. I want to go out and do segment 3 really, really good, and make it as best we can under the players we have to put on the team. So, but Orndorff was a Florida guy, played running back at Tampa, known as a tough guy, and great body. And Bill Cowboy really had a great respect for Paul. Paul Orndorff was not one of those guys who would go into a bar and get his ass whipped by a civilian. He's a rugged, tough dude, and I always had I had a lot of fun with him. And later in life, I saw him a lot. I don't do very many of them any longer. The appearances, probably should do more. Probably like to do more, but it's just hard to fit into your schedule. But in any event, Orndorff I thought was going to be a good hire. Here's the thing about Paul: if getting him on the right between the lines, he would have been great to work with some of those young baby faces. Timing, slow down, speed up, lay it in, don't do this, don't do that, whatever. That's what you're looking for. And because we need to build with youth, but you got to have somebody that's better than you're working with. That's the only way a talent gets better, Conrad, is they spend most of their time wrestling people that are better than them, and that raises their game. So, but I like that. I like that hiring. The sad part about it is that Paul still has something to go. And when we talk about Paul and WCW, basically, all people want to talk about is just the fight he had with Vader. And there's a lot more to Paul Orndorff in WCW than his fight with Vader, I can tell you.
Hey guys, Eric Bischoff here, and just want to call a quick timeout. I want to tell your listeners about what I've been telling everybody at over at 83 Weeks, quite a while now, about all the cool things that are happening over at adfreeshows.com.
Boy, have we got a treat for you guys today. It's something we're calling the book. And today we're going to examine the actual handwritten notes from Mr. Fritz von Erich. These are essentially day planners that have his real name on the outside, and it's his handwriting every day of the month for the entire year of 1982. And that's what we're going to be working through.
And that's not all. Conrad sits down with former WWE writer and CEO of Major League Wrestling, Court Bauer, as he discusses his time in WWE, what he's doing now, and some never-before-heard stories about Vince McMahon.
Are you saying that you actually pitched Vince McMahon an Exploding Deathmatch and he was on board with it once upon a time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone in the room will back that up. It was such a cool spectacle. I think maybe it was the IWA one.
And if you're looking for an interactive experience, our top guy sat down with WWE Hall of Famer Jake the Snake Roberts as he answered their question.
And all the other whoever's watching, that Jake Roberts would drop you that DDT and you wouldn't get up. So all you're doing is telling the fans you're not as good as I am.
That's just a small taste of what we've got waiting for you. With 4 levels to choose from, see for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now at adfreeshows.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And another guy we're going to start learning about is Charles Skaggs. It's written in the Observer. He was working as Flying Scorpio in Japan, and he's expected to debut at the Clash of the Champions in the Ghetto Street Fight since Robbie Walker, who was Simmons' original partner, was fired earlier in the week. Meltzer would continue. Even though Skaggs has a lot of potential and a finishing move off the top that is equal to anything in the business, it appears his prime qualification for being chosen as a replacement in the Ghetto Street Fight isn't that he has a lot of potential or a hot finishing move. So Meltzer basically implying we wanted another black guy in there. I'm glad Scorpio got the opportunity. It is interesting to see that Robbie Walker's, who we're going to come to know as Hard Work Bobby Walker, who later sues WCW for discrimination and then winds up going to prison. That's worth a Google. But Robbie Walker here, talk me through that. Do you remember why he was fired? Or because this is a guy who essentially sued WCW for not having a push, but here he is supposed to be a tag team partner with the world champ at Clash of the Champions on TBS. My goodness.
Bad booking, bad decision making. Ron Simmons did not need or deserve to be with someone with questionable character. And the guy ends up in prison. That should answer that questionable character situation.
Yeah.
I'm seeing this photo here. I wouldn't have been able to pick this kid out of the lineup. He made no impression. He had a great dude to have a great body. Yeah. And he could move. He's athletic. He just didn't have it. And here's why he was booked: his skin color. And, they're getting that, the unwritten quota conversation started. But Scorpio was head and shoulders above Robbie Walker as far as talent.
Oh my gosh, not even close. I totally agree. I do want to ask, do you think in hindsight we should have called a match a Ghetto Street Fight? Boy, that doesn't feel like that's maybe the best idea.
No, it's lazy.
Yeah.
It's lazy booking. And, I don't know, man. This is, again, go back to, it's all this show has been all about questionable booking.
Yeah, it has.
I've tried to explain it wasn't just JR's opinion. Here's why I believe this to be true. And here's how we could have solved that issue. But it's too late now.
Of course, it's too late for Robbie Walker too. He's locked up, and you can lock up a good deal with Geico right now. You should check that out. Apparently, Walker finds out he's not on the booking sheets, so he just leaves a TV taping early. He's supposed to be doing something on TV. Finds out, well, after the clash, I'm not on the sheets, so I'm out. Well, that'll get you fired. And there went his opportunity, and it created an opportunity for Scorpio. And boy, he makes the most of it. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. Meltzer would say of the Orndorff thing that we touched on earlier. Orndorff came in for the show airing Saturday, and Jim Ross brought up the problems he's been having with Ron Garvin, which tells you there's some kind of agreement that's been worked out with Smoky Mountain if Ross is going to acknowledge another promotion's feud. That stuck out to me because this is really an interesting point in time. I mean, Jim Cornette's come into town. You've explained that. He's maybe upset with you. He goes on today's radio show out in Vegas and basically says so. But at the same time, Jim Hurd's coming in and saying, why don't you guys do more stuff with the USWA? It's interesting to see how potentially there's different alliances. And that's something that by and large hasn't been commonplace in wrestling over the years.
No. Sharing assets. It's all ego driven, Connie. It's all ego driven, quite frankly, and quite honestly. But I do think that Cornette could have been a bigger asset to Cowboy. If nothing else, you go to him and say, I need a finish for this match. And have him do that. He had got to book the whole territory. He doesn't have to write the entire television if you don't want him to. And you can't come up with a deal. And Corny had his territory going. I've always been a Cornette fan. Hell, I worked for Cornette for free because he didn't have the money to pay me for a while in Smoky Mountain. So I've always been a team player with him, and I still am. Do I agree with everything he says? No, not it's his opinion. I don't have to agree with him to have respect. I don't have to agree with him for any reason other than he and I have been friends for 30 years, and he hasn't changed a goddamn bit. He's built himself a hell of a business with his podcast stuff he's doing. He's a very smart guy, and I just think Cowboy could have used him at that point in time. I mean, you had myself there, and you had Cornette there, you had Jake there. You had some pretty good minds that could have collaborated if it was a controlled collaboration. But having 6 or 8 wrestlers sit in a room and figure out how to get their buddies booked and who's going to go over. When the wrestlers start talking about too long about who's going over, you may have an issue, a latent underbelly issue. Because I'm just not a big believer in, you shouldn't worry about your win-loss record. You should worry about your performances.
Totally agree. And if you're concerned about performance, let me give you a pro tip. Athletic Greens. It's something JR and I do on a daily basis. We think you should too. And let me explain why. I first started taking AG1 at the start of the pandemic. My wife was a big believer in us trying to optimize our immune system. What we found out along the way is you also get better gut health, have more energy. And maybe you hate taking pills or vitamins and you want a supplement that actually tastes great. I recommend AG1. Now, what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're going to be absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your focus, your recovery, your aging, all the things. And how about this? Our pal Dallas, he would want you to know it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you're trying to eat keto or paleo or vegan or dairy-free or gluten-free, it has less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, no artificial anything, and it still tastes good. It's going to support better sleep quality, better recovery, mental clarity, alertness. Think of it as like your all-in-one nutritional insurance. Now, don't take mine or JR's word for it. These folks at Athletic Greens have amassed more than 7,000 5-star reviews.
That's Conrad. Excuse me for interrupting. That in itself is phenomenal.
I mean, I don't think the last time I went out of my way to leave a review, it's got to be freaking over the top amazing or the worst experience ever for me to seek out time out of my day to go leave a review. But more than 7,000 people didn't give it 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4, 5 stars, baby. Come on. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health. Arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop and a cup of water every day, baby. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And check this out. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/JR. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/JR to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Great product. Great product, buddy. Great product.
Something that wasn't a great product, well, this whole arm wrestling deal. It's down to Vader, Simmons, and Van Hammer. And Meltzer says, thankfully, it's going to be over soon. Jesse Ventura is the guy in the middle. And I get, arm wrestling is a thing that, they're even making movies about it. Sylvester Stallone had the whole over-the-top movie a few years prior to this, 1987. And it was a pop culture thing. But, man, we got boxing matches in WCW. We got arm wrestling in WCW.
We're looking for something.
More wrestling. That's what we need.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. It's just we got too gimmicky. And here's the thing. It comes back to the same bottom line as what Stone Cold would say. And that is, are the talents that we're doing these arm wrestling, these gimmick matches, are the talents over? No.
Right.
So no matter how your presentation shapes up, no matter how creative it may seem on paper, you're dealing with talents that are not over. And so the fans at the end of the day just don't care. They have not made that emotional investment into the talents that we're trying to sell.
So let's talk about, since we're talking about wrestling, two of the best wrestlers on the roster, maybe their futures are in jeopardy. Meltzer would say no word on Arn Anderson or Bobby Eaton's future. Both men's contract expire in early January. Anderson is working singles at a lot of the house shows from this point forward with Watts. And the promotion definitely wants to keep Anderson in some capacity, which may include a booking committee position, but it's doubtful they'll renew his $260,000 salary. Eaton's future is less secure. I understand that times are lean and houses are down and all that, but could you ask for two better wrestlers on your roster than Bobby Eaton and Arn Anderson?
Hell no.
No.
So why are we even thinking that way? And not you and me, but in this light, in this context.
Yeah.
Oh, Bobby, how do you? I guarantee you, most fans will agree with this, and that is, you couldn't ask for a better foundation pieces to build from than Arn and Bobby. They're phenomenal. You lose the Steiners, so you got spots open for tag team stars and main eventers. You've got a lot of young talent that you're putting in tags to hide their inabilities. And if you want somebody to work with a young talent, who better than Bobby Eaton and Arn Anderson? I don't know anybody. So all of a sudden that became an issue, and it was simply one thing. It's always just one of the two C's, Connie, cash or creative. And with Bobby Eaton, he was a lot more about the cash, which it should be, than he was, are we going to get the belt or can we get the strap? I think we should have the straps. So to me, that's a no-brainer. You get him as close as you can to making him happy. Let the guy make a good living. Don't worry about your checks. They're going to come every week, blah, blah, blah. But man, that to me, that would have been the shortest meeting of the day. You come up just give me the number that you want. Let me see how close I can get to it. And let's get this thing done one way or the other.
Something else that happens one way or the other is Chris Benoit doesn't sign. And according to Meltzer, they want to create a heel tag team, and they wanted Benoit in that heel tag team. And since Benoit has not signed, they're going to be quote unquote forced to put Pillman and Austin together as a regular tag team. So think about that. Had Benoit taken the offer from WCW, it might have been Benoit and Pillman as a tag team, not Pillman and Austin. I'm glad it wound up the way it did, man.
Yeah, it worked out fine. Steve's one of his, I think, favorite parts of his career was tagging with Brian. They're buddies. They had a lot in common, and they were just, they knew they were both going to be stars. and those of us that were around them and watched their evolution do the same thing. And all of us are right. They were going to be great. Under our booking and our creative philosophies, maybe not so much. But I'm with you. But to get Benoit on the roster, I ain't going to complain about that either. And I know a lot of people don't even want to talk about Benoit because the last few hours of his life, but simply talking as a wrestler, Chris was extraordinary. I mean, he was one of the best I ever saw in my life. And it's just, I still can't believe that his life and the lives of Daniel and Nancy ended like they did. But after further review, there's reasons for that. He had that CTE thing going on, and I don't know. I feel bad about that whole deal. But how lucky would the WCW have been if at that point in his life that we could sign Chris Benoit? Right. He's going to go out there and have a great match with everybody that he's in the ring with. He can work with anybody. So, and he was hungry. I think Chris really wanted to be a single star, and not necessarily his first preference wasn't to be a tag team star, even though he'd have done it and he'd have done a great job with it.
Let's talk about somebody else who would have done a great job with it. Of course, we're talking about our old pal, Mr. Orndorff. It's written in the Observer that they're not exactly sure what he's going to be doing because some of the stuff has already leaked, meaning they thought maybe it was going to be him and Ron Simmons since they did the TV stuff, but the booking sheets have leaked that it's going to be Dan Spivey versus Ron Simmons. But more concerning is their own magazine, the WCW magazine, has already told the story of Barry Windham turning on Dustin Rhodes. Those magazines hit the newsstands the day before it happens on live TV at Clash of the Champions. Is this just a function of the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing? Are we getting too big for our britches? Talk me through this.
No, it's communication, lack of structure. Left hand, you hit the nail on the head. As simple as that. Left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. And it ended up being a very embarrassing scenario because you're not talking about two ham and eggers.
No.
You're talking about major, major stars for us.
Your tag champs.
Yeah. Yeah. So how that slipped out like that or whatever is still a head shaker.
Well, it's a head shaker when we see Bill Watts on the 900 number. He's going to set the record straight and say, no, WCW's paying for guys' medical expenses if they got injured on the job. We're just not paying them. But if they wanted to secure their income, they had the right to buy a Lloyd's of London policy if they wanted to protect themselves. And if they don't, well, that's on them. And Meltzer would say the Lloyd's premiums these days go for about $17,000 a year. And he suspects that figure will rise rapidly over the next year. That's a lot of money now, certainly a lot of money back then, especially based on the new Watts pay structure. Did you think it was quote unquote fair that if a guy gets legitimately injured and he gets sent home, we're not paying him?
No, it wasn't fair.
Yeah.
You don't do that. But it was so many strange decisions were being made.
Right.
We've revealed so many strange decisions and things that didn't make any sense. This could have been done to fix that. You and I have not just simply sat down here today to identify problems. We have discussed solutions to those problems. And I will tell you that a lot of those solutions were discussed. I was still working closely with Cowboy, whether I liked it or not, because it's just guilt by association. And the more heat Cowboy got on him, the more it dripped down to me. And I didn't think that was fair. Nobody's going to tell him what to do. Nobody's going to tell Cowboy what to do. And so his lack of or want to compromise was really hurtful at times.
Well, I'll tell you what else is hurtful. Realizing you've overpaid because you didn't go to Geico. Let's talk about Clash of the Champions. We're finally here. It's not critically acclaimed. 72.6% thumbs down in the Observer based on the readers of the Observer. The show gets a 3.2 rating, a 4.8 share. It's in 1.93 million homes. And Meltzer would say it's the second lowest rating of all the Clash of the Champions. The only one to do worse was the June 22nd Clash, which was just 2 days after a pay-per-view, and it was tape delayed with the NWA Tag Team Tournament. The previous Clash, which was the 20th anniversary special, did a 3.7. So we're down here from a 3.7 to a 3.2. But a year prior, this same November Clash, but from 1991, did a 4.3 rating. So we got a 26% decline year over year here. It's tough in WCW here.
Yeah, and look at here's how you can dissect that somewhat. The main event had a lot of star power, and the one that got the better of the two ratings we're discussing. And look at the names in it. Let me find my spot here. Who was in the main event of the one that did the good rating, Connie?
Luger and Steiner.
Okay. Star power.
Yeah.
And, and then who was in the main event of this last one? This one we're just
This is a tag match, and it's going to be Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes taking on Shane Douglas and Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, and the magazine, our own magazine, shit on it.
I'm glad you said that because, man, it tickles me that it doesn't just happen in the magazine. Again, that's the main event. Let's remind everybody. It's Barry Windham doing a heel turn after Dustin Rhodes shows some sympathy for Ricky Steamboat. So Dustin cost his team the tag titles. And now Shane Douglas and Ricky Steamboat are the tag champs. They've got both the NWA and the WCW straps. That's the main event. It goes on last. But when you take your first commercial break here, we plug the magazine and say, don't forget to pick up the new WCW magazine where we break down how Barry Windham turned on Dustin Rhodes at Clash of the Champions. Process what we just said here, guys. We give away the finish of the very show we're talking about in our very first commercial break.
Right.
How does this happen?
Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one more line to that, and nobody gave a shit.
Yes.
The thing about it, people were running from WCW about that time, but nobody wanted to touch it because it was identified as the Titanic. It's going down.
Right.
And a lot of those people in Turner started backing away. We lost some support there because I'm sure in some of those board meetings, those little dudes with the navy blue blazers and light blue shirts and red ties, that we're going to lose wrestling. We're going to make a move. And I'm sure it was discussed because that would have been a big decision, quite honestly. But anyway, it was stupid. I mean, it's like, how can that happen? Somebody's not paying attention, and some bodies didn't care enough to want to fix it. So for a guy like me, this wrestling's his life, as it still is, for better or for worse. Man, I just don't. It was frustrating as shit. And sometimes these shows can end up being cathartic for me. I did a thing with your boy Casio the other day where I narrated with him the Montreal screw job. I think fans are really going to like it because it talks about the psychology. I talked about the psychology as it was happening. So we had visual aids, so to speak, on that deal. But it's one of the more fun things I've done. And I also know that I was the best looking guy on the set. No kidding. Casio did a good job. He's a good asset for you and me.
Well, so is Geico. Let's talk about the crowd here. We got 7,500 folks in the building. Only 700 of them were paying. 700 people paid $7,000. This is a live special on TBS.
Yeah.
We gave out 14,000 free tickets. And of the 14,000 people who got free tickets, a little over half of them showed up. And like 5% of the folks who had an opportunity to get tickets actually gave a single dollar for them. This is just disaster, and it's really a miracle that WCW continued beyond and into 93 and forward. Like, I know that they had never turned a profit by this point, but it doesn't even look like there's a path to profitability at this point, is there?
Not until you get some talent over.
Yeah.
Stars are needed, and somebody had to find the magic formula, and it took a while to find that, quite frankly. And it only happened then when Eric signed some of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling. I mean, come on.
And let me give you just, to add further context to this. We're not saying that they had trouble filling a building or selling tickets or what have you in North Dakota or Alaska or Siberia. We're in Macon, Georgia, which is about 80 miles from Atlanta.
Yeah.
It would be akin to the WWF having to paper and just give away tickets 80 miles from Manhattan. That's crazy. But that's what happens. And thankfully, we're getting to the show now. We got Brian Pillman showing up. He's on crutches. Brad Armstrong's going to come out to confront him. They do not really a match, more of an angle. And it results in Brian Pillman turning heel. And I guess he's sort of been leaning that way, but boy, he's attacking Brad Armstrong with the crutch, proving he was fine all along. And he gets the quick win in 25 seconds. These guys are capable of badass, unbelievable matches together. We've seen it. They don't get the opportunity here. It's more about story. But I guess we're trying to establish Pillman as a bad guy, because when you see what Pillman does with his, and again, this is the Watts era, so maybe he can't do some of the aerial stuff that he's done before. But if Pillman is afforded to do that, fans are going to like that. They're going to want to cheer that.
Right.
So let's make sure that there's nothing likable about him as a character. And well, this gets the job done.
Well, psychologically, the old school way of doing that matter is, why should I hate a heel if he or she, A, doesn't cheat, and B, you find very entertaining? I didn't know. You might be a fan of a 450 splash. You might be a fan of some of those exotic moves with funky names. But gosh, a dog. Pillman had it, but Cowboy would have lessened Brian's high flying, spectacular moves. And then some fans going to say, listening right now, well, that doesn't make any sense, JR. It does if you're trying to build a heel who has very few redeeming social qualities and presentation skills. You have to sacrifice some to get to where you want to go if you're trying to build a heel. And that's what we were trying to do at that point in time. Something impactful and something that where there's conclusive proof that when the match was over, Brian was the bad guy.
Eric Watts is going to be out next, teaming with Kensuke Sasaki to take on Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton. They go 6 minutes and 6 seconds. It was sponsored by Geico. Eric Watts thought he needed homeowners insurance because Daddy was the booker. Sasaki probably thought, I need renter's insurance. I won't be here very long. And we know Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton were looking to save some cash because their contracts were in doubt. So Geico was probably the answer there.
Probably.
In all seriousness, you get a 3/4 of a star match here. Meltzer would say the younger Watts may make it on his merits someday, but today he should be winning in prelims and kept low key on television rather than one of the most focused on personalities in the company and put over workers that are so obviously several classes above him. And listen, I understand that this is, in fashion to sort of dunk on Watts, but at the same time, that's kind of how wrestling goes. You have wrestlers who are obviously several classes above their opponent help get that guy over. Ric Flair did it every night of his career. Roman Reigns just did it for Logan Paul. That's kind of the way wrestling works, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Eric, I said this on this forum maybe a week ago, maybe earlier today. Eric was a year away.
Yeah.
He needed a year of doing exactly like Meltzer suggested.
Yes.
A little presence on television so he didn't lose total familiarity. But wrestling with heels, if you're going to make Eric a babyface, that are better than Eric, that can teach him. That takes time. And so many illustrations that we've talked about today, time wasn't given to allow people to develop their game. And so consequently, you got guys that you're trying to draw a TV rating for that aren't over to any degree. I don't care if I see them or not. And that was unfortunate. He was a great kid, but he was booked wrong. And it had a tremendous impact on his career.
Let's talk about the next match. It's Scotty Flamingo knocking out Johnny B. Bad in 1 minute and 1 second of the second round. They did a pre-match interview, which was hilarious. You saw DDP rubbing Scotty Flamingo's shoulders. A guy wearing a Don King wig squatted down in front of Scotty Flamingo. And then you see Vinny Vegas cut a promo with Tony Schiavone. He's supposed to be from Vegas. His name is Vinny Vegas. But when he starts to rattle off all the different casinos and everybody who's flown in town to see the fight and put their money on their man, Scotty Flamingo, he can't remember the names of any of the hotels besides the Sands. He struggles to come up with Caesar's Palace and then says, all of them, I don't know. And Meltzer would be critical of this and says, why is he trying to have that accent? Nobody in Vegas talks that way. He's trying to do an Atlantic City accent, but be from Vegas. Yes, they both have gambling, but so what? At least in the WWF, when they have a guy doing a bad Hawaiian accent, they don't bill him from Florida or California. I think that's kind of funny. I didn't notice it the first time I saw it, but he's definitely doing My Blue Heaven, Steve Martin. He's doing that Northeast impression, but he's supposed to be Vinny Vegas. This whole thing is silly. The match comes to an end when Flamingo has a loaded glove. After the first round, DDP submerged the whole glove in a bucket of water. He comes out, nails him with a loaded glove with water, which I didn't know was a thing. And down goes the real boxer in the scenario, Mr. Mark Mero, Johnny B. Bad. He's down for the count. And DDP, Kevin Nash, Raven, Mark Mero, 4 Hall of Famers here in the same piece of business, but it's a goofy ass boxing match.
Yeah, you can't build it in a week or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You just can't. So you're dealing with a group of players that eventually would find success, have significant careers, make a lot of money. Kevin Nash made a fortune.
Yeah.
And I always hope Kevin is doing the best he can over the loss of his son, which I can't even imagine losing a child. God almighty. So, but yeah, it was star-studded, but none of them were over.
Right.
Let's try to get them over. Somewhere along the way, you got to stop, and you got to go with what you believe to be the safest route creatively when you're rebuilding. And we were certainly in a rebuilding mode, but nothing. You can't build overnight. You just can't. It takes time.
Let's remind everybody that we're going to do a drawing for the Battle Bowl. We're trying to get everybody primed up for Starrcade. And the idea is, we don't know who's going to face who. So they do the big raffle bin and they draw names. And we announce the first match for Starrcade. It's Cactus Jack and Johnny B. Bad against Danny Spivey and Van Hammer. Whew. I don't know why they think that's going to be. Yeah.
It's not, but that's what we had.
Mm-hmm.
And you're searching, you're looking, you're desperate, you're grasping at creative straws. Just let me find something or somebody. I need some magic. I need something special that we can build on. And so when you do that, that's where you narrow in your ranks. In other words, you lessen how many people you're going to work with in the top echelon. And golly, we just didn't. Cowboy knew that, but he was getting pressured too, to make changes. And there were some fans, there were fans, hardcore Meltzer reading like fans that were working, wearing those blue jackets and red ties. So it's crazy.
Let's talk about what's next, because this is the Scorpio match, and I'm pretty excited about it because you did the entire show or the entire match without knowing this kid's name. You keep saying, we don't know who this is, because it was supposed to be Robbie Walker. Instead, it's Too Cold Scorpio. We find out his name after the match. He starts with a big dive over the top rope, which is incredible. He finishes with a shooting star press that nobody had ever seen. Meltzer gave it an extra star just because of the move. And then afterwards, they do the ringside interview that we're seeing here on YouTube with Jesse Ventura asking Ron Simmons, hey, who is this guy? It's Too Cold Scorpio. Of course, they just beat Cactus Jack and Tony Atlas. This was originally supposed to be or Tony Atlas and the Barbarian, because now it's not just a ghetto street fight. It's quote unquote ghetto odds. It's 2-on-3. Let the world champion Too Cold Scorpio win this ghetto odds match, beating the Barbarian, Cactus Jack, and Tony Atlas, who's in really as a replacement for Butch Reed. So in storyline, Butch Reed on one side, Ron Simmons on the other. That's pretty exciting. When it doesn't happen because Butch is out of here, we slide Tony Atlas in. But when Robbie Walker's out, we slide Too Cold Scorpio in. I'm glad Scorpio got the opportunity, but this feels less than for your world champ.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Just Cowboy trying to protect Ron.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it was odd, a unique booking to say the least.
Speaking of unique bookings, now we're going to have a man wrestle a woman. And by the way, he's not a wrestler. It's Paul Lee Dangerously going to a 5-minute draw with Medusa. And this is WCW snafu. And here's what's so interesting to me, that WCW continually has all these production issues. And WCW is a wrestling company owned by a television company. It's a TV company doing wrestling, and they're not doing the TV well. We're supposed to see a guy slide in there, Mike Thor, dressed up like Medusa, and immediately get clocked with the phone. But we're not supposed to see this fella run out of the ramp, run down to the ring. They're supposed to have full screen graphics up. Well, they don't do that. So instead of seeing Medusa, we see a 6'2", 240-pound person running down the ramp. Clearly not Medusa. We totally missed the phone shot completely. And now there's just a person in a blonde wig, a large person laying face down in the ring. And then we see it's Medusa coming out, and then they start their deal. But boy, this is just one bad piece of business after another, unlike anything you would get at Geico, right?
Yeah, bad communication. Quite frankly, bad communication, Conrad, from whoever laid the match out, communicating what they laid out to the truck. So the truck would be prepared for these situations that you're saying that was missed. I'm not disagreeing with you where they were missed, but it didn't have to happen that way. Communication been better. We would not be talking about this particular aspect of this match.
Let's do Sting here. We got Sting and Rick Rude going to a King of the Cable tournament semifinal match. They keep showing the clock, and it goes to a as we said, split decision. We got 3 different judges out here. Ole Anderson, who they introduced as a referee at first, which makes me laugh. Hiro Matsuda, who's here supposed to be representing New Japan Pro Wrestling, and Larry Zbyszko. Well, Larry, being a heel and a former faction stablemate with Rick Rude, he votes for Rick Rude. Hiro Matsuda and Ole Anderson vote for Sting. So Sting wins. Meltzer would say it was better than average, only 2.25 stars. It kind of is what it is, I suppose. And then it's time for our main event. We get Shane Douglas and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat winning the tag titles from Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes. It's a great storyline. It's well put together. It's a great match, but Meltzer would say, unfortunately, nobody cared. It was technically as good as it could have been, going 15 minutes and 52 seconds. Of course, the idea is Steamboat is injured, and because he's injured, Rhodes shows a little bit of sympathy. As a result, Rhodes costs his team the win. Barry Windham is upset that he's no longer a tag champion and just beats the dog out of Dustin Rhodes afterwards.
Who saw that coming?
Yeah, I loved it. And then he goes backstage and takes it out on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You know, he's doing a backstage interview with Shane Douglas. They have all their straps there. He comes in hard with a chair and just beats the dog out of him. He really does legitimately cut Steamboat in the process. And the post-match angle is just phenomenal. This is really, really the best thing on the show. And it's only 2.5 stars, but it's really because of the lack of the fan intrigue. And maybe it's because they were all comps. They didn't pay to see it, so they don't care. I don't know. But the match is good. The story is good. The post-match is phenomenal. And it really does show you what Barry Windham's capable of as a top guy in this main event position and storytelling and as a heel. You know, we had seen him bubble to the top a few times before, but now he's about to be on a serious path for the NWA world title. And what do you know? After the first of the year, here comes Ric Flair, and we got some cool stuff planned for Barry in 93, but I can't help but wonder if Barry would have been given this opportunity in 86 or 87 or 88 or even 89.
Yeah.
Man, he could have been, don't get me wrong, Barry's still great, but physically he doesn't look quite the same. And I don't think his matches were maybe as good as they were a few years before.
But not too far off, Conrad.
Not at all.
They weren't too, he didn't go out and have stinkers. But
No.
It's called Father Time.
Yes.
You know, and he was a big man that took bumps. So that takes a little bit extra toll on your body. But you know, you're right about the fact that he was the answer. If you didn't have Flair, you had to search long and hard to find a better answer to fill that role. And he never, whatever. And I always was surprised at that because, you know, for a long time, Dusty was the booker and Dusty and Barry were like family. I just felt like that there would have been more opportunity there, but for whatever reason, you know, there's always that little thing about, well, Barry's, he might not be as reliable, and you know, he whatever. I don't know that. All I know is that whenever he was booked, he showed up and he worked his ass off. I knew that. So I've always been shocked that he didn't get more of a push. I know you love that word. What's my push royalty check coming in?
You got to get that going, right?
Oh yeah. So, but anyway, Barry was a unique character, to say the least, in my opinion. Underutilized, at least underutilized.
Well, I mean, he was smart back then and now. I know personally he has Geico. Hey, let's talk about Magnum TA. He gets hurt backstage. It's reported there's something going on and he has some sort of injury. Do you remember what happened with him?
I do not. You know, I do not. Was it when did that allegedly happen?
At the show here, Clash of the Champions. I'm not exact. I mean, clearly he just had some sort of fall or something. I don't know.
Could have been. Could have been.
Well, here's what I know. Nothing's fallen over at jrsbbq.com because the rumor and innuendo is, well, it's finally here. You got hot sauce, baby.
Yeah, there it is. JR's red ass hot sauce. And it's selling like crazy. I'm very overwhelmed, quite frankly. We're selling about as fast as we can box it up and ship it to you.
I love it.
So it's really, it's good. It's clean. It's got some personality, without question. And I know there's a lot of hot sauce connoisseurs out there. I can't give you a description because it's going to, what it tastes like, because everybody's taste palette is a little bit different. I can just tell you that it'll get your attention, and it adds great flavor to so many things. But there are a lot of hot sauce connoisseurs out there, and when they buy their first bottle and they try it, then we'll get the feedback that we're looking for, hopefully, and just try a bottle and see what happens. The other thing about our products, Conrad, is that our shipping is very timely, which tells me that we should be in your conversation about holiday gifts.
There you go.
And so now's a good time to be thinking seriously about that. You know, hell, Thanksgiving's upon us.
Next week, baby. Here we go.
Now let's rock and roll. So it might be something to think about, because that way you get ahead of the curve. You're not worrying about shipping and all those things. We have a great array of products. But right now, the star of the show, the guy that's working on top, is Red Ass JR's hot sauce. It's doing great. And I appreciate everybody, too, for giving it a shot. God knows we talked about it ad nauseum enough.
Well, we can talk about the beef jerky. We can talk about the barbecue sauce, the hot barbecue sauce, the main event mustard, the Chipotle ketchup. It's all at jrsbbq.com. Love to have your business. As we always say, it costs nothing to look.
Not a damn thing.
And we are looking forward to next week. We're going to be talking about the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. We'll talk about him growing up and his rise to fame and Stampede. Him and Dynamite tearing up in the WWF as the Bulldogs and over in Japan. Eventually, he's going to start teaming with Owen, and he'll win the European title and leave after the screw job and then come back. And then, unfortunately, He's no longer with us. But I love the British Bulldog as a kid. Can't wait to talk about him next week. We'll also cover Ravishing Rick Rude, the WWF developmental program, In Your House DX, Goldberg coming to the WWE, and your final Starrcade, which happened in 1992. That's how we'll finish up the year. You get all of these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. There's like 15 shows, so you're talking, and that's every week. You're talking like pennies an episode. You get it for just $9 a month. We also launched a brand new series that I'm pumped about called The Book. I'm actually recording episode 2 with David Manning tomorrow. We got our hands on the actual booking sheets, the actual booking journal that Fritz von Erich held. And we're talking to his right-hand man, David Manning. We'll be doing the same for Jim Crockett Promotions. Jim Crockett Jr.'s books are now in the possession of David Crockett, and we'll break all of those down. We've also got a new series we launched called The Family Business, where we talk to Ricky Morton's son, Kerry Morton, who's a third-generation wrestler and now the light or the junior heavyweight champion for the NWA. Right. He's going to sit down and talk to other second and third generation stars about growing up in the business. Maybe you've got an appetite for a one-of-a-kind live experience. Well, we just did a sit-down with Hacksaw Jim Duggan and a live watch-along with Jake Roberts for his swan song in WCW, Halloween Havoc 92. So consider adfreeshows.com. And while you're at it, check us out on social. We'd love to have your questions. If you got questions about next week's episode, which is about the British Bulldog or anything else, it's at JR Grilling. JR and I are both active on Twitter. It's at JR's BBQ or at Hey, it's Conrad. And the best way to introduce a new listener to our show would be to direct them to our YouTube. They want to hit the like button. They want to hit the subscribe button. They want to turn on the notifications bell. It's youtube.com/grillingjr. And I had a lot of fun today talking about your next to the last Clash of the Champions. It wasn't a great time for WCW, but it's fun to look back and think about all the steps and maybe missteps that were made along the way.
Yeah, it was interesting to talk about those things. And again, with better communication, trying to be a little bit more transparent, trying to step away from the overt office politics coming from corporate, coming from the talent, coming from Cowboy, all those things. It was an amazing time, and it was time for me to go. And it worked out good for me in that respect. So I'm glad we did this show today. It's a little depressing, to be honest with you, because a lot of those screw ups and stepping on your Johnson. Well, I wish I could do that. Step on my Johnson.
You'd only do it once.
Yeah. Then you remember, never step on your Johnson. But I'm glad we did it, Connie. Yeah, I was a little worried about it because these shows, I invested emotionally in these shows. I was there. I was enjoined to these issues. And so anyway, I'm glad we did it. Hope folks liked it. We try to point out little things, not just like I said early, Conrad and I are problem solvers. We'll give you solutions, potential solutions. And it's easy to book in hindsight. So we appreciate you guys joining us. Hope you'll join us on Friday night for Rampage from Newark. And of course on Saturday night on pay-per-view. It's a huge pay-per-view that I figure is going to last 4 hours plus. I'm just guessing. I ain't been told that. But the card is just too big for it not to have a lot of legs and a lot of substance. So in any event, join us if you can. We promise we'll do our best to deliver for you. I'm excited about whatever I do. So we'll go out there and kick some ass, Connie. You know that.
It's going to be fun, man. I'm pulling for John Moxley. That turd MJF can't win the title. But if he does, damn it, we'll talk about it next week.
Riot. No, I'm kidding.
I'm not going to say that. But we will talk about it next week right here on Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you very much.